The grand 18th century stone mansion stood silhouetted against the gray Connecticut sky, overlooking a pristine lawn now being blanketed by a heavy winter snow. Inside, 72-year-old Evelyn Vance sat by the frosted glass window of her drawing room, her wrinkled fingers curled around a warm porcelain teacup. But the cold settling in her chest had nothing to do with the weather. Evelyn was no ordinary woman. She was the matriarch of the Vance estate, the widow of Arthur Vance, a legendary shipping tycoon who had left behind a fortune vast enough to secure 3 generations. But if wealth could buy genuine peace, Evelyn wouldn't be sitting here feeling like a stranger in her own home. On a mahogany table in the center of the room sat a velvet-lined case. Inside rested the Vance Diamonds 120-year-old heirloom necklace and ring set valued at over $4 million. To the world, it was a masterpiece of vintage craftsmanship. To Evelyn's children, Julian and Victoria, it was the only reason they still checked if their mother was breathing. Julian, 45, was a high-flying New York investment banker. His bespoke suits, luxury penthouse, and his wife Beatrice's expensive social circles were entirely funded by the monthly allowances Evelyn signed off on. Then there was Victoria, 41, a relentless socialite whose husband, Charles, lost hundreds of thousands of dollars every few months and failed real estate ventures debts Evelyn silently covered. "Mom," Julian said, swirling a glass of expensive bourbon as he gestured toward the mahogany table, "you really shouldn't keep the Vance diamonds in the house anymore. Times are changing, and with your recent forgetfulness, it's a massive security liability." Victoria eagerly nodded, adjusting her designer coat. "Julian is right, Mom. In fact, the New York Autumn Gala is next month. Beatrice and I were talking, and we think it's the perfect event for me to debut the necklace. After all, it is my birthright. It belongs on a modern canvas, not locking away in a dusty room." Evelyn offered a faint, sad smile, the kind that masks a bleeding heart. "Your grandmother gave me these diamonds, Victoria. She told me they should only pass 2 hands that understand the weight of love, not just the price of gold. When the time is right, you will get your inheritance. Until then, they stay with me." Evelyn's saving grace in the lonely mansion was Clara, her housekeeper of 25 years. Clara wasn't just staff. She was a sister in spirit. She had watched Evelyn grieve Arthur, and she had watched Julian and Victoria mutate from spoiled children into predatory adults. One rainy evening, while Julian and Victoria thought Evelyn was asleep, Clara overheard them whispering fiercely in the dimly lit corridor near the kitchen. "Need at least $1.5 million by the end of next month," Victoria. Julian growled, his voice stripped of its usual smooth charm. "The regulatory audit is closing in on my firm. If I can't inject liquidity, I'm facing a federal indictment. The old woman is hoarding that velvet box like a dragon. She won't budge. You think you have problems?" Victoria hissed back. "Charles is facing bankruptcy. If we get our hands on that necklace, we can fly to a private dealer in London. Nobody would ever know." "Mom is 72, Julian. What does a senile widow need a $4 million necklace for? She's just a glorified vault, standing between us and our survival." Clara fled the hallway, her hands trembling as she burst into Evelyn's bedroom to recount every word. Hearing it, Evelyn felt a part of her soul wither away. The children she had nurtured, the babies she had stayed up nights to comfort, were now plotting her financial ruin. Worse, they saw her as a biological obstacle. Evelyn spent the night staring at Arthur's portrait. "You were right, Arthur," she whispered to the empty room. "I taught them how to spend a fortune, but I never taught them how to love. But the bleeding stops today." The next morning, Evelyn made a quiet phone call to Mr. Abernathy, a master jeweler and one of Arthur's oldest friends. When he arrived, Evelyn handed him the Vance diamonds. "Abernathy, I need a replica," Evelyn said, her voice steady and resolute. "An absolute flawless duplicate. Cubic zirconia, high-grade glass, synthetic plating. It must look identical to the untrained eye, but be completely worthless. And the real diamonds, lock them in your deepest commercial vault. Nobody touches them without my written consent." Abernathy looked at her with grave concern. Evelyn, what are you planning? If they test it. I am testing them, Evelyn interrupted coldly. I need to know if I gave birth to human beings or vultures. 2 weeks later, the worthless duplicate was delivered. It was terrifyingly perfect. Evelyn placed the fake jewelry into the original velvet box and sent the genuine piece to the bank vault. Next, she coordinated with her lifelong family physician, Dr. Harrison. At Evelyn's request, a confidential, fake medical brief was drafted, subtly suggesting that Evelyn was showing signs of advanced cognitive decline, and that her primary bank accounts were facing a temporary legal freeze due to unusual administrative errors. The stage was set. Evelyn leaked the news of her failing health and a fictional break-in attempt at the mansion through a family acquaintance. Within hours, Julian and Victoria arrived, breathless and frantic. But they didn't run to her bedroom. They ran straight to the living room table. Julian snatched the velvet box, flipping it open. Seeing the diamonds glittering safely inside, he let out a sharp sigh of relief before finally turning to look at Evelyn, who was sitting under a thick wool blanket, acting frail and confused. Mom, what is going on here? Julian demanded. We heard there was a This place is no longer safe, and honestly, neither are you. Dr. Harrison told us your cognitive tests are disastrous. You can't even sign bank authorization forms properly. Victoria sat on the edge of the sofa, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. We've made an executive decision. Mom, it's time to transition you into a luxury assisted living facility in upstate New York. It's quiet, secure, and professionals can handle your episodes. We will take over the management of this estate and your assets. Evelyn looked into the eyes of her children and saw nothing but naked greed. I don't need a facility, she whispered softly. But Julian, Victoria, the doctor is right about one thing. My bank accounts are frozen due to a legal audit. I don't have any liquid cash right now. I need $5,000 to clear the household bills and Clara's wages this month. Julian, can you wire it? And Victoria, can Charles pay back even a fraction of the loan I gave him last month? The air in the room instantly turned to ice. Julian snapped the velvet box shut, stepping back. Mom, you don't understand. My capital is tied up in high-risk investments. I can't spare a single dollar. And frankly, if you're out of cash, why are you keeping Clara? Fire her. Sell this house. Exactly, Mom, Victoria sneered, her sweet facade completely evaporating. Charles is bleeding money. We can't bail you out. If you're so desperate for cash, hand over the Vance diamonds to us. We can liquidate them through a private broker and put you in a nice, cheap home. Evelyn stared at them. And if I don't give you the diamonds, will you not help your own mother? Julian adjusted his designer coat, looking at his watch. Mom, reality isn't a Hallmark movie. In the real world, transactions are mutual. If you're going to hoard a multi-million-dollar legacy asset while expecting us to waste our hard-earned cash on a sinking ship, you're being delusional. We'll check on you next month. Hopefully, you'll be more reasonable by then. Without checking if she had groceries, without looking at her prescriptions, they walked out. For the next 3 weeks, the silence was deafening. Evelyn's birthday came and went. Not a single phone call, not a single text message. They had completely ghosted her, believing she was a broken ATM with nothing left to give. A month later, the Plaza Hotel in New York was hosting the annual Autumn Charity Gala, the pinnacle event for the city's elite. Julian and Victoria had spent weeks bragging to their high society peers that Victoria would be debuting the legendary Vance diamonds, claiming their mother had gracefully passed the mantle down due to her declining mental state. 2 days before the gala, Julian and Victoria had snuck into the Vance mansion while Evelyn was out for a medical appointment and stole the velvet box from the living room. They thought they were geniuses. They thought a senile old woman would never notice. The gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers gleamed, and champagne flowed. Victoria walked the floor, the duplicate necklace resting heavily on her neck. Matching rings catching the light. Beatrice stood beside her, loudly telling a group of wealthy women, "Yes, it's the original Vance heirloom." Evelyn insisted Victoria wear it. Poor Evelyn, her mind is completely gone now, you know. She can barely recognize us. Meanwhile, Julian was huddled with top-tier investors, using the sheer prestige of the heirloom to secure a massive multi-million bailout for his failing firm. At exactly 9 p.m., the massive double doors of the Plaza Ballroom swung open. A sudden, stifling silence fell over the room as every head turned. Walking into the ballroom was Evelyn Vance. She wasn't frail. She wasn't wearing a blanket. She was wearing a breathtaking, custom-made navy blue silk gown that commanded the room. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, her posture immaculate, radiating a cold, terrifying authority. Flanking her was the city's most feared corporate defense attorney, Mr. Ethan Vance, Arthur's old legal counsel, and to uniformed NYPD officers, but the detail that made everyone gasp was her neck. Around Evelyn's throat was a diamond necklace that looked identical to the one Victoria was wearing. Evelyn's was blindingly radiant, catching the light with a ferocity that made Victoria's look like cheap glass. Julian and Victoria froze, their champagne glasses slipping from their hands and shattering on the marble floor. Victoria clutched her throat, her face draining of color. "Julian, what is she doing here? What is on her neck?" Evelyn walked gracefully through the parting crowd, stopping right in front of her children's table. The media cameras began to flash relentlessly. "Julian, Victoria," Evelyn said, her voice echoing with crystalline clarity across the quiet ballroom. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice you sneaking into my home like common thieves to rob your own mother? Mom, stop this madness. Shut up," Julian hissed frantically, his face burning with humiliation as investors stared. "We didn't steal anything. This is a family matter. You're confused." "Confused?" Evelyn laughed, a rich, mocking sound that cut through their pride like a razor. "Victoria, take a good look at the piece around your neck. The entire set you are wearing isn't worth more than $500. It is a cubic zirconia, fake made of cheap synthetic glass, which I commissioned 3 months ago." A collective gasp rippled through the high society crowd. Victoria frantically ripped the necklace off her neck, staring at it in horror. No, you're lying. It's real. We saw it in the box." Evelyn's attorney stepped forward, opening a leather folder. "Ladies and gentlemen, and members of the press, we are officially filing charges against Mr. Julian Vance and Mrs. Victoria Charles for grand larceny, residential burglary, and attempted elder financial abuse. We have full, high-definition security footage from the Vance estate showing both defendants entering the property unauthorized and stealing the velvet box. Furthermore, we hold a certified appraisal from the New York Gemological Society proving that the authentic $4 million Vance diamonds have been secured in a bank vault and are currently being worn by the rightful owner, Mrs. Evelyn Vance." The investors standing around Julian immediately took a synchronized step back. "Julian, if you're willing to rob and gaslight your own mother to cover your margins, you're a liability. Our deal is dead," the lead investor stated coldly before walking away. Victoria began to weep openly, her social standing evaporating in seconds. "Mom, how could you do this to us? You've ruined our lives. We are your children." Evelyn looked at them, her eyes devoid of anger, holding only a freezing, absolute detachment. "Children? When I tested you, when you thought my accounts were frozen and I was helpless, you abandoned me. You didn't even send a text on my birthday. You plotted to lock me away in an asylum, just to split my inheritance while I was still breathing. You never loved me. You loved the box. So enjoy the box, children. It turns out your love was just like those diamonds, completely fake. The fallout was catastrophic. Because the scandal took place in front of New York's elite, Julian's investment firm collapsed overnight as clients pulled their funds in a panic. He was fired by his board and blacklisted from Wall Street. Victoria's husband, Charles, realizing there was no Vance fortune coming to save them, immediately filed for divorce, leaving Victoria broke and homeless. Within a month, their luxury cars and penthouses were seized by the banks because Evelyn revoked her signatures from their co-signed loans. A month later, a bitter winter wind blew through the gates of the Vance mansion. Standing outside the front door were two bedraggled, broken figures, Julian and Victoria, shivering in cheap coats, their pride completely shattered. Clara opened the door. Julian looked at her with swollen, tear-filled eyes. "Clara, please, just let us talk to Mom. We are starving. We have nowhere to go. We're sorry." Evelyn walked slowly to the foyer, holding a thick manila envelope. She looked at her biological children. A faint pang of a mother's grief hit her chest, but it was quickly conquered by the memory of their cruel words. What does a senile widow need a $4 million necklace for? Evelyn slid the envelope through the cracked door, letting it drop to their feet. Inside that envelope, you will find 2 legal documents, Evelyn said, her voice flat and unbreakable. The first is my updated will. I have officially donated the Vance diamonds and 80% of my estate to the New York Children's Safe Haven facility. You will not inherit a single cent of Arthur's legacy. Julian gasped, picking up the envelope with trembling hands. Mom, you gave it away. You left us with nothing. Evelyn looked at them one last time before slowly closing the heavy oak door. I gave you my real love for 40 years, and you threw it away for glass. Evelyn's voice echoed from behind the door. You always preferred sparkling objects over family. So, I legally transferred ownership of the replica diamonds to your names. Sell them for pocket change and rebuild your lives. The heirloom was fake, Julian, but then again, so was your love. The heavy lock clicked into place. Outside, Julian and Victoria collapsed onto the snowy steps, weeping in the freezing wind. Inside, the mansion was filled with the most beautiful, pristine silence Evelyn had heard in decades. She walked back to her armchair, took a sip of her warm coffee, and looked out at the snow. She was finally free. Her life was her own, and the vultures were finally gone.